Imagine you're a German soldier in 1944. You're sitting inside a bunker so massive, so thick, so reinforced, that you've been told it is indestructible. Wall thickness? 15 feet of reinforced concrete. Roof? Steel bars thicker than a man's wrist. You believe, genuinely believe, that no weapon on earth can reach you. But suddenly, the ground beneath your feet begins to tremble. Not like an explosion. Not like artillery. No, this is something different. A deep, horrifying, unnatural vibration. Like the earth itself is tearing open. You don't hear the bomb. You don't see the bomb. You don't even know where it landed. Because it didn't explode on you. It exploded under you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the unbelievable story of the earthquake bomb. A weapon so powerful it didn't just destroy bunkers. It swallowed them whole. A bomb that laughed at concrete. A bomb that ignored steel. A bomb that turned Nazi fortresses into sandcastles on a beach. This is the story of Barnes Wallis's seismic monster. The Tallboy and its even bigger brother, the Grand Slam. The impossible problem. In 1943, the Allies had a huge problem. Germany wasn't just building bunkers. They were building super bunkers. Fortifications so massive the Allies called them mountain bunkers, U-boat caves, submarine pens, vengeance weapon fortresses. These structures weren't built to resist bombs. They were built to resist earthquakes. The German engineers believed, arrogantly but not incorrectly, that these fortresses were practically invincible. To give you an idea, some roofs were 23 feet thick. Some walls were 11 feet thick, made of reinforced high-grade concrete, covered by sand, steel, earth, granite. A typical Allied bomb, it would barely scratch the surface. Even a 2,000-pound blockbuster bomb, the biggest the RAF used at that time, could do little more than cosmetic damage. Germany mocked the Allied bombing raids. They called their bunkers bomb-proof cathedrals. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Then something happened. A British inventor, one man, stepped forward with a weapon idea so insane, so futuristic that even the Allied Air Force initially refused to believe him. His name was Barnes Wallis. He was the father of the bouncing bomb from the Dambusters raid, but this time, he wanted to build something far more terrifying, something that wouldn't just crack a bunker, but rip it out from the ground. The mad genius, Barnes Wallis, believed something revolutionary. You don't need to destroy the bunker. You need to destroy the earth holding the bunker. Instead of dropping bombs on German fortresses, he wanted bombs that burrowed under them. Then, or at the perfect depth, the bomb would explode, not as a normal blast, but as a seismic shockwave, a shockwave that travels underground, shatters foundations, destabilizes concrete, collapses the entire bunker from below. This was a completely new concept. The military said, impossible. You're wasting your time. But Wallis didn't care. He started designing anyway, and what he created would change warfare forever. A 12,000-pound monster, the Tallboy, and later an almost apocalyptic 22,000-pound weapon, the Grand Slam, earthquake bomb. Why normal bombs failed. To understand why Wallis's idea was genius, you need to understand the flaw in normal bombing. A traditional bomb explodes on the surface, sending energy sideways, scattering force into the air, and wasting most of its power. German bunkers were designed to survive exactly this. A direct hit on a concrete roof? No problem. A near hit? Meaningless. Even hundreds of hits? Barely cosmetic damage. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. But then, Barnes Wallis realized something brilliant. Concrete is strongest on the surface, but weak beneath the ground. If you could shake the soil beneath a bunker, if you could undercut its foundation, it would collapse like a building whose basement had been blown out. This wasn't bombing. This was geological warfare. Designing the weapon nobody believed in. Wallis designed the Tallboy to be aerodynamic like a falling arrow, made from super-hardened steel, strong enough to survive penetrating 20-plus feet into Earth, capable of reaching near supersonic speed, detonating several meters underground. The shape was revolutionary. Long, thin, needle-nosed. It didn't fall. It dove, almost like a missile. Engineers laughed and said, "It will break apart before it reaches the ground." They were wrong. Very wrong. Tests showed the Tallboy could hit the ground at over 750 zones, fast enough to penetrate soil like a bullet entering butter. Once buried deep, its delayed fuse detonated. Then nature took over. A massive underground shockwave spread outward, like an earthquake ripple. The stronger the bunker, the harder it fell. Germany had no idea what was coming. No German engineer had imagined such a bomb. Their bunkers were designed for direct impact, air bursts, conventional bombing, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could protect them from the earth shaking beneath them. They had created fortresses, but Wallis created a weapon that ignored fortresses, a weapon that went under the armor, under the concrete, under the steel, straight to the heart of the problem. This was the birth of the first true bunker-buster bomb in history. The first target, the Somme railway tunnel. Before Tallboy was ever used against the giant, impossible bunkers, the RAF needed to test it on a target worthy of its power. That target was the Somme railway tunnel in France. It wasn't just any tunnel. This tunnel was a crucial German supply artery, a passage through which thousands of troops, weapon parts, ammunition, and fuel moved every week. Destroying it would paralyze German logistics. But there was a problem. The tunnel was dug into solid limestone rock. Normal bombs? Useless. Even 4,000-pound blockbusters could barely crack the outer mouth of the tunnel. The RAF's top brass told Barnes Wallis, "If Tallboy can destroy this, we'll believe in your earthquake bomb." So on the night of June 8, 1944, just 2 days after D-Day, the legendary 617 Squadron, the Dam Busters, lifted off with 6 Lancasters, each carrying a single 12,000-pound Tallboy, heading for Somme, flying low, silently slicing through the midnight sky. Inside one Lancaster, a gunner later recalled, "We knew we carried something different. Not a bomb, a beast." When the squadron arrived over the target, they didn't drop the Tallboy on the tunnel. They dropped it above the hillside, so it would burrow deep into the rock. The bomb screamed downward through the night. A German officer described it as a falling train, whistling, growing louder, unstoppable. The Tallboy penetrated 20 feet into limestone, then detonated. What happened next shocked even Allied intelligence. The ground above the tunnel collapsed, taking the tunnel with it. A 100-meter section folded inward like cardboard crushed by a giant fist. Inside, the rail line disintegrated. Steel rails twisted. Timber supports buckled. The entire hillside sank several meters. The Germans tried to clear it. They failed. The tunnel remained closed for the rest of the war. Tallboy had proven its power, and the Allies were stunned. The birth of the Earthquake Squadron. After Somme, everything changed. Barnes Wallis went from eccentric inventor to the man who just rewrote physics. RAF Bomber Command fully committed to his vision. They chose one squadron for Tallboy missions. 617 Squadron, the elite of the elite. These pilots had the best precision bombing skills, years of special weapon experience, on near-perfect teamwork, on nerves of steel. They practiced for hours to master something incredibly difficult: high-altitude precision bombing. Typical bombers hit a target somewhere in the town. 617 Squadron hit a target the size of a tennis court, from 4 miles up at night. This accuracy was essential because Tallboy only worked if it hit within 100 meters of a bunker, at the right angle, at the right speed, in the right soil type. Captain Leonard Cheshire said, "Tallboy was useless without perfect delivery, and perfect delivery was our job." Enter the monster, the Grand Slam. While Tallboy was tearing the earth apart, Wallis was already imagining something even more terrifying. A bomb so huge, so heavy, so destructive that it would make Tallboy look like a small firecracker. That weapon became the Grand Slam, the earthquake bomb, 22,000 pounds of steel and explosive, the largest conventional bomb ever used in WW2. It was so big that, at its explosive weight alone, equaled an entire fighter plane. The Lancaster bomber had to be stripped of armor, most guns, most fuel. Yeah, the bomb bay had to be completely rebuilt. The bomb itself had to be carried partially exposed. The plane took off at dangerously low speed. Pilots said it felt like lifting a tank into the sky. Even 617 Squadron, the bravest of the brave, admitted flying with a Grand Slam was the closest thing to a suicide mission. But when it hit, it created a crater bigger than a house. It generated seismic shockwaves traveling in all directions. It could collapse bridges, submarines' pens, bunkers, tunnels, even structures the Germans thought were absolutely indestructible. And the RAF was about to prove that. Germany's megastructures, the real target. Hitler loved gigantic structures. He believed that size, invincibility. He ordered U-boat pens made from reinforced concrete thicker than a bus. V-weapon bunkers with ceilings 20 feet deep. Anti-aircraft towers built like medieval fortresses. Secret weapon sites carved into mountains. Submarine shelters the size of factories. These weren't just buildings. They were monuments of arrogance. The Allies called them behemoths, monster fortresses, concrete cities, cathedrals of war. The problem was simple. Nothing could destroy them, until now. Barnes Wallis believed these structures had a fatal weakness. Not the concrete, not the steel, but the soil beneath them. This turned Germany's most impressive structures into perfect targets. And 617 Squadron prepared itself for the impossible, to destroy Hitler's invincible bunkers, one by one, from below. Operation Crossbow, the V-weapon bunkers. Germany's dreaded V-1 and V-2 weapon programs were terrifying the Allies. Missiles that could strike without warning, flying bombs that rained fire on London. To stop them, the Allies needed to destroy their launch bunkers. The problem? These bunkers were the strongest structures Germany had ever built. One of them, the Mimoyekes fortress, was so reinforced that Allied intelligence estimated nothing short of an earthquake could damage it. Perfect, because that's exactly what Tallboy created. On July 6, 1944, 6:17, Squadron attacked the Mimoyekes bunker. Normal bombs left scratches, but a Tallboy? It created a 20-foot deep subsurface collapse, destroying the underground weapon tunnels. The Germans were stunned. One officer wrote, "It was as if the hill swallowed itself." After seeing the damage, the Germans abandoned the entire site. Tallboy had achieved what no bomb in history had ever done. It had defeated a bunker through geological destruction. And then, the giants. With the V-weapon fortresses falling, 617 Squadron moved on to the most ambitious targets of all. The U-boat pens, submarine shelters, giant concrete roofs, massive naval bunkers, the impossible targets. Even the Luftwaffe admitted, these structures cannot be destroyed by air power. But they hadn't met Tallboy yet. The ultimate test, U-boat pens. German U-boat pens were the crown jewels of Nazi engineering. Gigantic submarine shelters with 20 feet of reinforced concrete, granite layers, steel mesh so thick cutting torches bent, multiple roofs stacked on top of each other, bomb traps designed to redirect explosions. The Allies had been bombing them for 4 years. Nothing worked. German sailors boasted, "If the whole RAF dropped every bomb they have, we will still be eating breakfast inside this pen." But 617 Squadron arrived with Tallboys, and suddenly breakfast didn't feel so guaranteed. The blow that shook La Pallice. One of the largest U-boat pens was located at La Pallice, on the French Atlantic coast. Before the Tallboy raid, analysts claimed, impossible to crack, roof too thick, structure too massive, too important to leave standing. And then the dambusters arrived. On August 24, 1944, precision Lancasters dropped Tallboys near the pen, not on it. This was key, because when the Tallboy burrowed into the soil and detonated, the entire pen shifted. Not destroyed, not cracked, shifted. The subterranean shockwave destabilized the foundations, tilting the pen several centimeters, enough to render internal machinery crippled and the structure unusable. German shock reports later stated, "The ground beneath us jumped. It felt like the bunker was sinking. It was sinking. The seismic bomb had worked." The assault on Brest. The port of Brest held one of the most heavily protected U-boat bases in Europe. 3 Tallboys penetrated deep enough to cause land collapses around the pen, burying entrances under debris and blocking U-boat movement. After the Tallboy attack, a stunned German engineer observed, the ground was changed. The sea itself seemed to move inward. That wasn't the sea moving. It was the earth swallowing the pen's access tunnels. The impossible target, submarine pen at Lorient. The Lorient pens were infamous. Massive, heavily reinforced, completely bomb-proof. Thousands of American and British bombs had done nothing. And then Tallboy arrived. 2 Tallboys detonated beside the pen. Shockwaves traveled underground, slamming into the concrete from below. Huge cracks formed internally, invisible on the outside, catastrophic on the inside. Machines fell from mounts. Interior rooms shifted. Pipes snapped. Electrical grids failed. Within days, the pen was effectively useless. German officers wrote, "No one could believe the earth itself would attack us." The death of a giant, the Tirpitz. Now we come to the most cinematic moment of the entire story. The destruction of the Tirpitz, the pride of the German Kriegsmarine. A battleship so large and so heavily armored that Britain had nightmares about it for years. The Germans believed it was unsinkable. 52,000 tons, multiple armored decks, thick side armor, anti-torpedo bulges, water compartments, deadly naval guns. But all of this armor was useless against an earthquake bomb. The attack. On November 12, 1944, 617 Squadron and 9 Squadron combined forces. Lancasters climbed to 14,000 feet and released Tallboys with perfect precision. 3 Tallboys hit the battleship. 1 penetrated the armor decks, falling deep inside the hull before exploding. The seismic shock tore through the ship. Massive structural beams shattered. Deck plates bent like paper. Internal compartments ruptured. Within minutes, Tirpitz capsized. Over 900 men went down with her. A German survivor recalled. The ship shuddered. Then the sea came inside. It wasn't the sea coming inside. It was the bottom of the ship collapsing from the shockwave. Tallboy had destroyed what no shell, no torpedo, no bomb could destroy. Enter the Grand Slam, Earth's own hammer. If Tallboy was a spear, Grand Slam was a planet-sized hammer. When the 22,000-pound bomb hit the ground, it penetrated up to 40 feet of earth, through rock layers, sometimes cracking bedrock itself. Then the delayed fuse detonated, releasing an explosion so massive, the blast briefly created a vacuum chamber underground. This produced a literal mini-earthquake. Concrete roofs didn't matter. Steel didn't matter. Depth didn't matter. Nothing could withstand it. The bridge that jumped. One of the first major Grand Slam targets was the Bielefeld Viaduct, a critical rail bridge in Germany. The bridge had survived. Thousands of RAF bombs, American raids, multiple direct hits, years of heavy bombardment. It simply refused to fall. And then came Grand Slam. On March 14, 1945, a single Grand Slam penetrated near a supporting pillar. The explosion wasn't dramatic. No giant mushroom cloud, no cinematic fireball. Instead, the earth bulged upward. The foundation cracked. The support pillar rose several inches. Then everything collapsed. A Lancaster pilot described it. The bridge didn't explode. It jumped. The Grand Slam turned the viaduct into rubble in seconds. Hitler's rail artery was severed permanently. Part 19, Bombing the Unbombable, the Valentin Submarine Factory. The Valentin Submarine Assembly Bunker near Bremen was one of the thickest concrete structures ever built. Its ceiling was up to 23 feet thick. Even Tallboy couldn't completely destroy it. So the RAF sent Grand Slam. 2 Grand Slams penetrated the roof, something no other bomb had ever done. They blasted huge holes through the ceiling, and the resulting shockwaves destroyed internal machinery and assembly halls. The bunker never operated again. A German officer wrote, "It was as if God struck the roof with a hammer." Even the Nazis could not exaggerate it. Part 20, the last monster to fall, Arnsberg Bridge. The Arnsberg Viaduct was another impossible target. Protected by anti-aircraft batteries, natural cliffs, thick support pillars, a German confidence. On March 19, 1945, the RAF used a mixture of Tallboys and Grand Slams. The bombs didn't need to hit the bridge directly. They just needed to hit the ground near it. Boom. The supporting earth disappeared. Pillars shifted sideways. The bridge tore itself in half. A German soldier said, "The bridge broke its own back." Yes, because the bomb didn't destroy the bridge. The ground did. And so, a war filled with superweapons, mega bunkers, concrete fortresses, and steel monsters met a weapon born not from brute force, but from pure physics. Barnes Wallis didn't destroy German bunkers by overpowering them. He destroyed them by outsmarting them. He created weapons that didn't care about armor, didn't fear concrete, didn't fight bunkers on the surface. Instead, he used the oldest force on Earth, the ground itself. Tallboy and Grand Slam changed warfare forever. They shattered U-boat pens. They cracked mountain fortresses. They sank the mighty Tirpitz. They humbled Hitler's indestructible strongholds. They turned Nazi engineering marvels into sinking graves of concrete and steel. And when the dust settled, the world learned a lesson that still shapes modern warfare. No bunker is invincible when the earth becomes the weapon. Today's bunker busters, deep penetration bombs, hypersonic penetrators, all of them trace their origins to one brilliant mind. Barnes Wallis, the man who created earthquakes in the sky. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into WW2's most devastating weapon, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more untold stories from the battlefield. This was the seismic bomb that swallowed Nazi bunkers. Whole, even concrete couldn't save them.